The process that sound travels from its beginnings through what we call the signal chain to eventually fall upon the ears of the listener has many stages. Each of these steps play a vital role and can significantly help or hinder the final result. Understanding this process will help us provide a valuable framework for future videos, but will also help us gain the perspective needed to make great decisions. The first step is the instrument: a guitar, a piano, horns, drums, and even the human voice. And each and every one makes a unique sound. Many different factors contribute to the quality of sound produced by instruments, from the materials it was made from to the quality of craftsmanship, and also how well it's set up and maintained. Even instrument selection can be vital, as some instruments are better suited for certain styles and purposes. These instruments, however, do little without the next step in the process: the player. Without a doubt, this is the most important step in the process. How a person chooses to play an instrument determines a majority of the resulting sound. So a lot of time and focus will be given to this area to help improve ability and understanding to be able to play great parts with great skill. Next, the sound generated by the instruments then have to be collected. Now, this is either done through a microphone or a cable of some sort. Sound here is greatly influenced by technique, gear quality, and again, selection. The collected sound then travels on to the processing stage, with the soundboard being the central hub. This stage involves things like EQ, compression, effects, and mixing. Sound then leaves the soundboard to be broadcast. And in a live venue, this is usually done through a PA system, with stops at a crossover, main EQ, and finally the speakers. Once the sound has departed from the speakers, it is then affected by the room. The size of the room, its dimensions, and even the kinds of materials used in construction all add to the sonic footprint. Then finally, the sound falls to the ears of the listener. How the sound comes to them, the volume at which it's delivered, and ultimately their personal preferences are the final determiner of whether the sound is deemed to be good or not. So the path is instrument, player, collection, processing, broadcast, room, and finally, listener. Now, all of these work together to produce sound, and with each stage contributing significantly to the sound, it's not hard to see how everyone involved is a sound person, not just the person standing behind the soundboard. Now, where we run into problems is where one or more of these areas are weak, are left out, or we get them out of order. For instance, we could have a great player, the best sound system, and if the instrument is out of tune or is improperly intonated, then it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to recover great sound. Likewise, you can also have the best equipment possible, but if you put it in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to play well, that will determine the quality of sound. One area that you might be surprised to find on the list is the listener. Who is this often overlooked person that is the end user? Well, the importance of knowing the answer to that question cannot be overstated. As you can have the best equipment, the best players, the best microphones and cables, and do everything right in the processing stage to produce the best rapcore polka music you have ever heard through top-of-the-line speakers in a perfectly conditioned environment. But if that end user doesn't like rapcore polka, or doesn't like rapcore polka played at that volume level, well, then you haven't succeeded. Why? Because the end user doesn't deem it to be good. Well, as you're probably beginning to see, part of what makes sound so challenging is that there are a lot of variables to account for. Lots of things change or can change, and what is done in one stage will drastically affect or can even counteract the sound that is happening in other stages. And as mentioned before, what can also happen is that these stages can get out of order. Too often, the player or the sound person becomes the end user. And decisions are then made based on what they hear and what they prefer and what they desire. The real goal should be to make sure that you have all of these in order and that you gain and live in the perspective of each of these stages to help you make the best possible decisions throughout the entire process. Although all of these stages are important, they are not all equally important. For example, a great musician can usually get the best out of lower quality gear, whereas a better guitar doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a better guitar player. Another example would be the soundboard. And while many put an extreme importance on this piece of equipment, it is usually non-existent in a classical music performance. All the work is being done by the quality of the instrument, the players, the room, and the listener. Placing too much reliance on the soundboard to fix problems that could have been avoided in other areas often result in limited effectiveness. And while the processing stage is very important, in looking for what contributes the most to the quality of sound through the entire process, the most important is the player stage. At least 50% of what makes quality sound comes from the player playing the right part at the right time and in the right way. So we're going to share with you a lot of approaches for getting the most out of each of these stages of sound that will be based on your training, your preferences, and really the availability of equipment. But as a general rule, mastering each stage of sound will make the next one easier. Conversely, as a general rule, when one stage suffers, so do the stages that follow. So you're going to want to make sure that you join us for our other videos, and you can also check out our podcast, articles, and other resources by subscribing to this channel and then visiting musicandministry.co.